Sure. Point at you and hit the button. Yeah. Okay. Well, welcome. It's a small enough group here that I've got some partially adjusted slides from a previous presentation that have not been fully tailored for you folks. So stop me at any point. Say, no, you're full of it. That's not how it works. Or could you elaborate more on this? Or I have a question about that, because this is really about trying to deliver value to you guys as you get your marketing plans and ventures whipped into shape. Just curious, who here is going to be marketing? Whose venture is more B2B focused? And anyone B2C? Okay, so, and another B2B is typically small companies or enterprise. Enterprise, okay. So I'll try to, anyone marketing primarily through channels as their distribution mechanism?
What do you mean by channels?
Like resellers, VARs, dealers, as opposed to direct to, okay, so I don't have a lot specifically for you, but I'm more than happy to have conversations offline, because when you're marketing through distro channels, it's an entirely different set of challenges. Let's switch slides. Kind of a lag on this.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's keep going. Okay, all this says is I've been around a long time, and hopefully you can learn from my mistakes and make new mistakes entirely of your own. Let's do next one. Yeah, and occasionally people have written us checks. Most of them don't regret writing those checks. I'm sure some do, but the next one.
Blockbuster.
Yeah, well, the problem with Blockbuster is it's interesting. We were working with the interactive thing, because they came out with a Netflix competitor, but too little too late. They had actually invented the business model before Netflix, but they were worried about cannibalizing their own business, so they put it on the shelf and didn't execute it. And so, of course, someone else came along and did it, and they were playing catch-up. But we actually, that was a neat project. That was the last gasp of Blockbuster was competing against Redbox. And they had a bunch of kiosks out there, and we were doing the local and maps and SEO and all the kind of Google local stuff, driving people instead of to a storefront but to a kiosk. And then that piece of them got purchased as well. Let's keep going. A bunch of brands. People in marketing tend to want to sell you what they've got to sell you. It may not be what's best for you. So when you're doing customer acquisition, I'm a big fan of getting the fruit on the ground first. Get the low-hanging fruit first. And most people in the space are going to sell you what they have. I can't tell you the number of times people have come to my shop and said, hey, I'm buying SEO, will you sell me SEO? And I'll look at their situation, I'll say, no, because it's not what you need. Come back in 6 months, come back in 9 months, do A, B, C, D, and E first, because I don't want you ticked off. I don't want you buying the wrong thing. So search and social are usually not the best forms of marketing. But there are about 40 different forms of marketing, and they're pretty high up on the list. The best form of marketing really is friends and family, right? Referral customers, flipping the funnel, your customer testimonials. Rarely can you get where you want to from that alone. Kind of the next best form of marketing is probably well-done PR. Sadly, I think PR is well done about 1% of the time. That'd be a whole different talk, and we could have a lot of conversation themselves. So when you're looking for a PR vendor, make sure they're talking about you, not talking about themselves, because you want it to be about you. But the nice thing about PR is someone else, when you get a newspaper article or a blog, in the sense that people are in a buying cycle or a research phase. If someone goes to Google and they research timesheet software, that's probably not a recreational search. It generally communicates intent. So that's really good that they're closer to a purchase decision, but they don't yet necessarily know, like, or trust you. So you got a lot of work you still have to do to build the credibility. Let's run on to the next one. I'm a big fan of doing lots of things. If you have the budget, the more of an integrated marketing approach you have, the better it's going to work with multi-touch. Sometimes we don't have that. So when we're early on, sometimes we just have one era, and we got to make it count. Out in Silicon Valley, when people might raise 20 million, They get a lot of arrows. They throw a lot of spaghetti against the wall. And when they see something hit, they double down on it. Here in Austin, sometimes we have 500K or 1 million. So we don't have a lot of room for error. And compounding that with most of the people doing marketing here are more like the Texas State football team than the Alabama football team. We have some issues. It can be an issue. Not that there's anything wrong with the Texas State football team. They have one, right? I think they have one. Okay, next slide. I mean, one never knows. So, the digital side of marketing, Google, Facebook, Bing, LinkedIn, YouTube, all that stuff, it can be the lead actor in the movie of customer acquisition if you're business to consumer or business to small business. Next slide, as we move, kind of upward to mid-market and whatnot, it starts to become a supporting actor. And on the next slide, if you're marketing to true enterprise, a lot of times digital marketing is really more the lubricant and the Greek chorus. It's even, it's useful, it's important, but it's not going to be the primary determinant as to whether somebody buys from you or not. So one of the key things in figuring out your marketing plan is understanding who's your customer and who are you marketing to. If you're marketing to enterprise, your customer acquisition strategy is likely very, very sales driven. You need a high dollar sales resource or a highly trained channel that's out there marketing your product, and then all the other stuff you're doing is really supporting air cover. Account-based marketing, retargeting to a list, adding that credibility, early lead gen, even though they're not sales ready. Let's see what's on the next slide. I actually don't even know, but I can probably talk to. Oh, okay. So I used to joke all the time that no one's going to choose which MRI machine to buy based on a Google AdWords search. Toshiba, GE, I don't know, do hospitals choose that on an AdWord? Not so much. However, they might not put you in the consideration set or might mentally downgrade you a little bit by your absence. If they expect you to be there and they expect you to be a contender, even though it's not going to sway the decision. Recently, ironically, the next slide, Google's changing stuff around. You look for best MRI machine, and now they're pulling things up with prices. I still don't think people are putting that in their shopping cart and buying an MRI machine. But Google's not entirely full of idiots. And clearly, they're providing more and more information on things that one would never have thought would be procured via a digital marketing channel. I still don't think it's how MRIs are bought, but they've moved beyond the text ads and rolled it up into their shopping search engine. Let's see what's next. Another thing in a lot of cases, if you're business to enterprise, you have the problem sometimes with materiality. There just aren't a lot of people searching for what you have. They might not know how to search, so they need to be trained with social or display or presentations or thought leadership, or they're just a few hundred a month. This is WellAware is a company down in San Antonio. They've raised about $30 million, and they're doing AI-driven analytics out in the oil fields. So they're applying big data and AI to the analytics of energy. Not a lot of people searching for that. We were having a hard time even spending a couple grand a month on Google. The searches just weren't there to cover it. And so they're going, why do we even do this? And ultimately, there were so few searches, we trained them how to do it, and they run it all in-house now, which is the right thing. But they need to be there, not just for customers. We'll go to the next slide. I think I know what's coming next. Journalists apparently are people too. Who knew? And they do Google searches. And so these guys, for just a couple grand of spend, got found, not by a customer, but by a Wall Street Journal reporter, looking at what is the impact that changing oil prices is having on the domestic U.S. kind of oil tech industry. And she wrote an article. How much would you typically pay a PR person to get a Wall Street Journal article? A lot. And you probably wouldn't even get the Wall Street Journal article. So you'd be 30 grand in the hole, and maybe my good friend Colin at the ABJ would write something, because it's easy to get something in the ABJ, but Wall Street Journal is pretty good. For business to enterprise, you want to figure out how to get the content you care about out where influencers and journalists and analysts will find it. And that it doesn't have to be horribly expensive. So yeah, that was their win. What do we have next? Let's see. Oh, yes. One of the key parts of any marketing plan right now is coming up with the hypothesis of what is your customer journey. A few years ago, we always talked in terms of the sales funnel. The problem is consumers and customers, whether B2B or B2C, are doing more research on their own. They don't always behave like we want them to. They go in and out of the research phase. They're not being very linear in that stage, but kind of thinking through what does that journey look like for an ideal customer, and then what is the content that we'd need at each stage of that journey to move them to the next stage. How do we get, if we boil it down to three things: awareness. Do they know that we exist and that they have some problem that we could potentially help with? Interest, when they start to engage and get more serious about it, and then ultimately action or conversion, something closer to a revenue event. And once we've mapped out that journey, there's a critical mass of folks that are already here. We focus on this part first, the down funnel or in journey things, and gather the low-hanging fruit. Some of us are doing businesses here that require lots and lots of education. People don't even know that kind of thing exists. And so in that case, we've got to shift the demand curve, and we've got to educate people. Sadly, that's often expensive. So someone like Loanables, the good news is people are already looking every day digitally, where they don't have to talk to. Who wants to talk on the phone these days? People would rather text emojis back and forth than actually have a conversation. So if you all have an emoji-driven customer acquisition strategy, that would be really cool. But I'm not the expert on that. Let's see what's next. So always be kind of thinking that journey and thinking through the micro conversions from one step to another. A lot of folks over-focus on just one layer, like getting lots of people to the website or getting lots of people to fill out a form. But if you're not thinking through the whole supply chain of acquiring a customer, you can actually introduce some real inefficiencies to the process. Like if you go to a trade show and you get lots of the wrong people giving you business cards, the real cost is the opportunity cost of your labor or your salesperson's labor following up on bad leads. Who has enough time? Anyone here a washing time? Okay, so you really want to be tight about thinking through these things and at every step kind of qualifying people and saying, is it still the right person? Let's see what we got next. Yeah, arguing's good. Because we have a journey and not, we're not playing the affiliate marketing game here where there's an instant conversion and it's just a one-off purchase. There are going to be multiple touch points. And we need to argue about it, because then the thing that finally knocks them over and gets them interested in the sales demo. A lot of times, like in B2B, a lot of times it's a recently minted MBA wearing a hat that says webinar person that will claim 100% credit for a sales-ready lead. And yet that email has been in the marketing automation system for 2 years beforehand and has been nurtured all the way through and was initially acquired from a trade show or an SEO search or something like that. So ideally, you're thinking about, it'll take time to build the data set. As you are building out your website and as you are building out your marketing tech stack, be laying the sticky paper of analytics so you can track all the touches. And you can come back and argue about what made a difference. Because otherwise, you're going to have this black cloud on the front of the process, but you can't figure out, what actually worked on the front end. I know it's working to get them finally over the finish line, but how did I get the right people to begin with? So this is something very important to do in B2C and B2B. And a lot of times it doesn't happen. Even with sophisticated retailers that have multi-million-dollar systems, a lot of times, anyone here ever bought anything online? On code. What do you think?
I can get it cheaper.
Yeah, you're thinking, I don't want to be the idiot that leaves that blank. So what do? Well, nowadays people are doing honey, but you do an alt tab and you search brand name space coupon You go to something like Retail Me Not, you fritz around for 10 minutes, half the coupons don't work, you have a really bad experience. Half the time you might get a phone call or get distracted and never come back to the shopping cart. Eventually you find a coupon that works, you stick it in there, and you know what? Cotter Cunningham claims 100% credit for bringing you that sale to the retailer. And most of the retailers idiotically fall for that. Because they've got a person at that retailer who wears the job title of affiliate manager. And guess what that person's bonus is based on? Handing money to Cotter Cunningham in coupon commissions. So from an attributional perspective, the affiliate guy says, I got that sale. Screwing up the attribution for paid search and email and SEO. Unless you're tracking it all and you're arguing about it. Because 99% of what Retail Me Not is claiming as a sale was already in the shopping cart. Was leaning into the end zone and they saw that empty box and didn't want to be an idiot. And then the whole edifice in essence was built on SEO trademark theft. Brand name, space, coupon. Not a hard SEO play. I mean, I love them. They're in Austin. We want every company in Austin to knock it out of the park. And I'm glad they did. But have the discussion. Understand what's really going on underneath the surface. Because usually it's a combination of touches. And if you're not tracking it and arguing, you're going to make suboptimal decisions. Let's see what else I got. It's easier to do it in digital. You always want the ABs. Always be testing. Always be testing ad copy, keywords, graphics, landing pages. Always have at least one test going on. So if you ever engage someone to do AdWords for you or Facebook for you and they're not running a lot of tests, this is Texas. Terminate them and go get another one. Because it's sad how few people actually do this. Because it's work. It's work, but this makes a huge difference. Always be measuring, looking at the data. And then asking what else can you learn from this? Because our marketing budgets aren't large enough. So if we have an email that's getting a higher open rate because we've tested subject lines, maybe that combination of words we also want to test on a landing page or on an AdWord. So always be thinking, what else can I learn from this? How else can I apply this into another silo of marketing? So these are the basics. I mean, I shouldn't even have to mention this, but most people go straight on to the advanced stuff. And this is going to get you the 80-20. I mean, it's kind of boring, and a lot of it is cleaning on the train over and over again, but it's an optimization routine you want to get into. Let's see what's next. So and they build out their marketing plan. It's all done in Excel, amazing, or Google Sheets or something like that. And they'll manage things by platform. So here's Google, and here's LinkedIn, and here's Facebook. And the problem with that is that ideally, we would measure spend by stage of customer journey, not by the platform we're spending it on. If I'm on Google, there are going to be some keywords that are never going to look good from an end of journey perspective, because they're awareness and interest keywords. There are going to be some campaigns on Facebook that are much more educational or engagement. Facebook's typically not going to look as good on shopping cart metrics. So I really want to try to measure things by stage of customer journey and have different metrics for each of those stages rather than measure my marketing budget by platform. Because there are a lot of keywords that if I have enough budget, I want to spend to get the visibility on Google, but they're not going to be sales ready just yet. So if I'm only measuring them by producing pipeline within 30 days, I won't do those keywords. And I'll miss out on a lot of the market. Let's hit the next chart. Okay, next chart. Great. Let's go for low-hanging fruit. I like that. People like video more and more.
Yeah.
Folks are reading less and less. People, amazingly, are consuming great quantities of video, binge watching TV shows on this. Most of your competitors are not doing video. So as you're launching your ventures from a marketing budget perspective, if you can figure out a way to deploy video early in your strategy, you'll have a leg up. And Facebook's great for that, Instagram's great for this. YouTube is the second largest search engine. You can do conversion-oriented videos. This is one that, one of the most boring areas ever, B2B software support. But because it was part of an integrated campaign done around the big SAP user conference, we got over 200,000 views. Now some of that was we did video SEO. Some of that was we did a lot of paid ads on YouTube. And some of that is we had press around it. But video can be, yes?
What is video SEO?
So search engine optimization is getting found by the search engines. If you have your videos properly optimized, they can pull up for a keyword search on YouTube, and sometimes they'll be blended into the native Google results as well. So it's simply not just uploading things to YouTube, but knowing how to upload them in a way that they're likely to get found natively rather than having to spend money for them. Yeah, and please, anyone ask questions anytime. Yes, sir.
What's your opinion on quality?
Where for hedge fund managers or for physicians, those folks are a little snooty, and you have to be dead on in terms of voice. They're witchy, you know, it's a little bit kind of more, has more authenticity if it's sort of moving around and whatnot. So it all starts with who's your customer. And you probably, you know, if you can, is that when you outsource video production, most of the people who want to sell you video services fancy themselves artists, and they should have been filmmakers, and it just like them yet another wedding. And they're all going to want to sell you high quality. Go as low quality as possible, test as many things, and then the one that works, if you ever actually get to the kind of budgets where you're doing TV, that's the one you move to the studio as the proven winner, and you do in high def. So I would say the video does not have to be expensive to make. Yes, sir.
On that note, I've got a friend that's for us that we use for a thing, and he's very reasonable. His day job is as a he makes training videos for teachers at school kind of thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, not a failed artist. It's just I like doing this. It's fine. Whatever.
That's what you want. Yeah. I mean, I liken it to musicians. Yeah, and definitely hunt this guy out and his friend, because you know we have a band in Austin called the Spasmatics. I don't know if you've heard of them. They're a cover band. 9 times out of 10, that's what you want. You know, in the symphonic orchestra, it's like Beethoven's Fifth, again and again and again. Because most people don't want to listen to the Kronos Quartet or Philip Glass or something that's atonal. Sure, like 1% of the population is just so pedestrian. And a lot of the people out there who are graphic designers and videographers and whatnot, sadly, don't want to just shut up and sing and play Beethoven's Fifth. They want to do the edgier stuff, and I totally get it. But you're the client, and you want the seats to be filled. So the right answer is actually test some of the edgy stuff and test the tried and true, and just actually see what happens based on data. Because sometimes that edgy stuff actually does perform 10x better, maybe 1% of the time. But if you get one of those wins, it's a real win.
I just wanted to ask if you have any resources for proper SEO.
For doing?
Before you upload a video to YouTube, what is there somewhere we can look to see, like, do make sure these things are done, use these hashtags?
There are a bunch of resources on the web on that. I mean, you know, title tag is super important. You want to have a transcript of the video, so you're telling Google what's in it. You tag it. YouTube also likes to see engagement metrics, so the number of views, number of watches on your wall. I mean, it's a small set of things that really drive the bulk of it. And the good news is, so few people do anything. Video SEO is relatively easy compared to the other types of SEO out there. So yeah, you can do it yourself, and you could probably find lots of ad agencies that want to train a 21-year-old how to do it on your nickel. But it's good with marketing, it's good to get deep enough in it yourself, so you at least develop a nose for whether someone else knows what they're talking about or not, and it makes you a better manager of those services. Let's see what else we got here. Okay, yeah, we had lots of responses, and this is a phenomenally good cost per inquiry in the B2B world. I mean, they're typically spending about $250 for one. So don't forget video. It's big. It's growing. Apparently, these moving, talking, colorized pictures are a thing. Who knew? Who knew? I mean, everyone thinks it's new, but they've kind of been around since the Jazz Singer, so they've just moved to ever smaller and more painful form factors. Let's look at the next one. Oh yeah, okay, more. I'll just beat this horse until it's like trebly dead. People are watching video. Well, what do we have next? Oh, yeah, there's this whole other search engine. Bing. So, most people don't do it. It's 10 to 15% of the market. Any of you be happy with 10% market share in your space? So, Bing is a less efficient market. A lot of people aren't there at all, so there are fewer people going for the inventory. Most of the people who do Bing export their Google account, stick it in Bing, and either do nothing or spend a very small amount of time Bingifying it. So if you actually have a smaller budget, sometimes we recommend just don't even bother with Google. If you don't have the money to play at the big boy blackjack table, here's the penny slots. Start here. Typically about 30% less expensive, converts at about the same rate as Google. So it's a way to get in and test things on a smaller budget. But it is only 10 to 15% of the market. Yes?
Have you seen Bing have better results with certain demographics, or is it pretty...
Yes. Disproportionately, the people using Bing with a slight skew are the folks who never changed what came with their computer. So what that means demographically, and this is data driven, you can tweet how horrible I am for saying this, but demographically it means that the audience is somewhat older, it's somewhat more female, and it's somewhat more subprime. So it's a little bit hollowed out in the middle class. And it's not hugely, maybe a 5%, 10% skew in those directions. So interestingly enough, the Bing audience is both slightly more affluent and slightly poorer because of the older skew. There are some people who use Bing because they're just Microsoft tech heads. They're in the Microsoft universe. So if you are playing into that universe, it's also a good place to be. But it's pretty close to the Google audience. It's just around the edges. There's some differences. Typically, again, the folks who didn't know how to change the default browser on their computer. Yes?
So you'd recommend maybe using Bing for some A/B testing on certain things?
I would. Yeah, I actually, every morning, I spend the morning on Bing and the afternoon on Google just to but I'm in the space. So I just want to see how they're doing things differently. And, I don't really notice that much of a difference in quality of search results served up. And personally, I want Google to have competition. I don't like it when someone's the 100-pound gorilla and I don't have a choice. So we all should be cheering on Bing and hope that we get some other entrants as well. What do I have next? Let's see. Oh, okay, let's do more. And again, stop at any time with questions. So these are some digital kind of advanced strategies, and sometimes they're a way of kind of sneaking around the competition. Let's hit the next one. So there's a company we've worked with for years in Austin, from when they were 5 people to now they're about 150. They're called ShipStation, and they're owned by Stamps.com, a publicly traded company. They've purchased a bunch of SaaS-delivered e-com shipping software solutions. And so they own ShipStation, they own Shipping Easy, and they own Indicia. So the game they're playing on Google is you can't find our competition. So there may be a small set of keywords that you just totally want to own. So an advanced strategy is figuring out for those keywords, how do you create multiple domains or landing page environments and basically treat Google like Procter & Gamble treats toothpaste or detergent, where if you're grabbing something at the supermarket, it's probably a Procter & Gamble thing. So you're running multiple brands. It's kind of an advanced strategy, and it does end up costing you more, but for some of the keywords, it might be worth it. I think I got another example on the next slide. This is doing the same thing on an SEO side. So I think this was probably a search for independent software support, and it's working things to run the table on SEO as well. That's a little harder to do, but it can be done. Let's see, what do we have next? I love SEO. Google is making it less and less, or working hard to make it less valuable. So they took away all the ads on the right, they added other stuff they've monetized, they put them on top, they expanded them, they made them look more like a natural or SEO listing. So they're trying to ensure you spend money with them. Reasonably competitive Google search, custom signs, 66 million, what we call SERPs. Lots of people competing in the index to rank for custom signs. 4 ads on top. Actually, yeah, 4 ads on top. The #1 listing in organic search is already halfway down the page. A company we helped build called Build a Sign in town. Let's go to the next slide. Then up comes the map. And the #2 listing in SEO, Vistaprint, but it's down at the bottom of page 1. So Google's really messing with SEO, making it harder for it to perform in ways than it used to. Vistaprint is quite good at SEO, and they're probably high-fiving about a #2 listing, but #2 listing down here has a tiny fraction of the traffic that it would have a couple years ago when the #2 listing was up at the top. So just be aware of how the giants, the Googles and Facebooks of the world are changing things up. They're trying to move everything to a toll lane, and they're quite good at that. I still think SEO is one of the better investments you can make, but you got to watch it carefully. Yes, sir.
So it used to be you could set your location and see what the results look like if you simulate a location. And how would you do that in bulk to monitor your placement in various locales?
I'd use a tool like SEMrush or one of they're third-party tools out there you could still use for that. Yeah, but it's harder to do these things natively on the search engines now. They are deliberately trying to take data away to make it harder to do this. I mean, in essence, the Google folks were looking at Mark Zuckerberg with jealousy, going, "Dang, he is one efficient troll." He got everyone out there putting the content, but now people have to pay to get that content to get found. And Google's going, well, we're not monetizing this nearly enough. So the last couple of years, a lot of what Google's been doing is making it harder to check, to prove the economics of SEO. And thereby forcing people to take the easy way out, and which is handing Google a credit card and saying, don't hurt me too much. And Google says, trust us. And then it's not a good strategy. Next slide.
Quick question on sort of search and like paid and organic search.
Mm-hmm.
We are finding we have a couple categories where we compete against much bigger companies, and it seems like they will sort of set up a campaign and it'll start working, and then it seems like 3-4 weeks later, Amazon is bidding over us, usually selling our same product.
All right.
What are your, is that all just happening algorithmically on their side?
Well, Amazon's probably driving some of that algorithmically on their side.
Yeah.
It is.
I guess we've got better margin. It's our product either way.
Right.
I don't really want to compete against Amazon on spend, but we do deliver a better customer experience when people purchase directly from us.
Right. Some of the, in a lot of cases, Amazon being a little different because Google gives Amazon a really high quality score. Fortunately, in a lot of cases, Google will charge other people more than it costs to buy your own brand. But one of the areas that Google has really jacked up prices lately is people protecting their own brand keywords. Used to be dirt cheap. You had an automatic high quality score. Google knew that people were going to respond well to that. In the last several years, they've moved up that cost almost 5 to 10-fold just because they can. They realize they can. They've got this thing they call a quality score, which is how much they decide they're going to charge you for a click. And it's largely your click-through rate times your bid, but there's a fudge factor in there. And they absolutely use that fudge factor to charge you whatever they need to deliver the earnings that they promised the street. It's kind of sick, actually, but they're good at it. You can, if you're selling through a channel and you're selling to Amazon and others, you could say, don't buy my keyword. So you could say, contractually, you are not allowed to bid on my brand term.
I don't know if Amazon would remotely listen to that, though.
Well, they probably wouldn't, because they violate MAP, they violate everything, then they claim they didn't.
Yeah.
And they say, oh, it was just our algorithm responding to someone else who violated it first. It's like, no, Amazon, you violated it first. And so
Yeah.
they, you know, none of these gorillas has your best interest at heart. But there are some things you can do around trademark in their ad, and they're not authorized to use it. So you could do a takedown that way. Let's go to the next slide. Earned media is trusted a lot more. And anyone who wants a copy of this, I can send you one afterwards, so that's easy. Let's go to the next slide. PR and search are blending. The sad thing is most PR people suck and don't know anything about search. And most SEO people, at least historically, were skanky lowlife looking for transactions. And like the interesting thing is, you know, I kind of liken it to the SEO folks were kind of like that creepy person at the bar at 2 a.m. that you just met. They're going, "Will you link to me?" It's like, ew, we just met. And then the PR people are like the people who, you know, at a cocktail party, you have this wonderfully scintillating conversation, great 15 minutes, and then they leave and you realize, I didn't even get contact info. And the right answer is kind of in between, and you know, 70% of ranking on Google is still your backlinks and off-page factors, but they've raised the bar, so they have to be links from better sites. So really, where SEO and PR are converging is in what I call influencer marketing. And the challenge is, PR folks are generally good at maybe talking to 50 folks. SEO folks, you know, particularly when it's shipped off overseas or something, might be trying to, you know, have 5,000, will you link to me, you know, spam emails. The real action's probably with about 500 people. And neither type of agency historically was geared to go after influencers. So that's part of a shift we're seeing in marketing services agencies, trying to shift to adopt to that. Let's see what else we've got. Let's see.
Use the next slide.
Next slide. Yes.
Maybe one other question on that.
Mhm.
SEO a few years ago when social was sort of taking off, it was all about engagement from social to
Doing a great job of picking up a lot of the social stuff because Google can't crawl Facebook.
right.
So the 800-pound gorilla of social has kind of made itself a walled garden that doesn't share data with Google. So Google's looking for other signals.
Yeah.
It's not always a backlink now. Like one of the things in the Google Maps, sometimes Google will test out things in its other search engines that influences your ranking in the Google Map is something known as citations, which is really, you're just mentioned by an authoritative site with or without a link. So there is some speculation that even if there's not a backlink, if you're being mentioned by, not Forbes, because Google gives you no credit for Forbes anymore, because they realize that anyone can be a Forbes contributor. So don't fall prey to someone trying to sell you backlinks from Forbes, because they don't work. Now, you might get just traffic from Forbes for having an article on the property. You still want that, but a lot of people are selling SEO scams of getting you backlinks from sites that Google knows sell backlinks, so they won't work. So, yeah, the Google algo is focusing more and more on quality. Most of the action is really in this middle of the pyramid now, finding the influencers. Let's hit the next slide. We've got a kind of a backwards thing going on in the marketing industry. We probably spend 80% of marketing budgets on creating content and only 20% on promoting content. And it really should be the other way. We should be thinking, what is the content that I need to create? But then I'm going to pour gasoline all over that thing and get it launched and get it out there. And the reason I think for this is really twofold. One, a lot of the people selling marketing services are writers or graphic designers, in essence. So their bread and butter is selling you their hours to make content. And if you're not careful, they'll eat up your whole budget and you'll have a beautiful stadium and a cornfield. And good luck. Maybe someone will accidentally find it. So just be thinking through the ratio as you're putting your marketing plan in place. Or do you have enough to promote the content? And I generally like to see it at least 50-50 and oftentimes 80% of the budget on the promotion rather than the creation of content. Let's see what else we got. Yeah, PR and SEO are kind of all sort of blending. You've got the content side, the PR side, the SEO side. Kind of that's the place you want to be. And what else I got? Oh, okay. We can get overly focused on our battleship of our website. So one thing to think of, let's go to the next slide. I'll go through a couple quickly. I don't recommend that because I think people are everywhere now. We do want to get them through our website, but they're probably not going to spend the bulk of their customer journey on our website. So let's be thinking through the next slide and figure out what's the flotilla of other things out there that we can have a content presence on and get found on. Where are people today, and not be entirely dependent on driving them through the web property we control. Let's see. So where can our content live? It can live on a bunch of social media channels. If we have dealers or partners or friends in the industry, it can live on their place. Press and PR, review sites, user groups, software advice, Trust Radius here in town, or I can put up microsites. So be kind of thinking through in your content strategy, do I want all this content to live on my website? Sometimes it's actually more credible when it lives elsewhere. It's far more credible than what we say about ourselves is what someone else says about us. So if we can get our content coming out of someone else's mouth on someone else's website, that's more credible than being on our own website. That's why I love PR when it's well done. Let's hit the next one. Okay, so that's, yeah, played plus earned is better than either standing alone. We've kind of got an industry problem here in that a lot of marketing folks are either in ad agencies or in PR firms. And the ad agencies understand paid promotional media promoting their art. You know, they have an infographic, or they did a video, or they built a website, and now we want to spend money so everybody can see what we created. And PR firms kind of generally turn their nose up at paid media. They go, oh, paid media, that's because you weren't good enough to get earned media. And I look at it just like a Boy Scout and say, there's a fire. There's a little paid media, or earned media fire. Can I get some paid media gasoline and pour it on that thing and have everybody see it? So earned media is more credible, but when you have an earned media spark, think about a paid media fire or accelerant you can put on it. Combining the two can be phenomenally powerful. Let's see what's on the next slide. Sometimes you can do interesting things with sponsorship too. They're like, here's CFO Magazine. A lot of the things in the B2B world have, the publishers have lead generation programs, where on this white paper program, I might have to pay CFO.com $25 for every inquiry that I get. But I might already have a cost per lead form of 50 or 60 bucks on my own webpage to get a lead. So if I view this, if it's 15 to 20 bucks, that's just a tax enabling me to rent their domain name as the destination URL of an AdWords campaign. So here I might take my Gartner category and say, what does CFO.com think about this space? And then as people are searching, they'll initially assume that CFO has an opinion, the destination URL will be CFO.com, and I go to the captive white paper lead program. And now I have 2 spaces on the Google shelf space for the keyword I care about. So even if it's not a pure earned media win, sometimes I can use third-party sponsored sites to get an unfair advantage out there in the Google space. Okay, what do we got next? Events. Almost nobody does digital marketing around events. Let's see what's the next slide on that. Dreamforce, big Salesforce conference, user group, over 100,000 people go there. Pretty spiky. So events are seasonal, but if there are events that you are thinking about exhibiting at, or you know that your customer base is attending, consider creating a digital presence around the event. Anyone here go to an event? How many times did you Google the event before you went to the event? There's a lot of search traffic around events. And let's hit the next slide. Almost nobody is, like, we had a digital conference in Austin, PubCon. which is kind of, they do 3 shows a year. They're solid shows. Nobody was buying the ad. Dirt cheap. So you could, as someone is searching for the event, you can reach out to them pre-event, try to get them to a landing page, either offer them a discount or a double registration in whatever sweepstakes you have at the event. But the key thing is, once they hit this page, you're retargeting them. They're seeing you everywhere around the web until they actually show up at the event. And by that point, you've pounded into their subliminal brain that you're booth 391 and come there to get their extra free thing. And it's dirt cheap compared to the cost of attending an event. So think about wrapping kind of a digital wrapper around the other parts of your marketing budget. Your competitors probably aren't going to be doing that. And again, here's why you need attribution, or you need to have a discussion, because here digital is just being a supporting actor in the demand gen movie, but a very powerful supporting actor. Let's see what we got next. Oh, and you can do one. I generally think Twitter is a waste of marketing dollars. 2 things it works well for: very targeted influencer marketing, and it works well for floating on top of the hashtag discussions around events that are important to you. So if there's a hashtag that you want to be noticed in, you can lean into that hashtag and you can do sponsored Twitter campaigns to float on top of that hashtag with your message. It's one of the only use cases I've seen that works on Twitter, but it can work really well, and not many people are doing it. Let's see what's next. Okay, let's click to the next one. So this is basically what everyone's talking about now with account-based marketing, which is really, it sounds like oh so fancy and oh so new. Really, it's just retargeting to a list. It's a list of accounts rather than a list of prospects. It's a list of people further down pipeline. But use the traffic from your web analytics to figure out what else can I do. If you can figure out that such and such a company came to your website, again, that's not something people typically do recreationally. Then go into a third-party data source, whether it's Salesforce's data.com, whether it's Inside Sales, whether it's Experian. Reverse engineer who at that company that hits your website are the likely titles and roles who'd be interested in your product, and then do an outbound campaign into it. So kind of look at the data hitting your website and say, well, how do I lean back in the other direction and chase it? Okay, let's do the next one. Just understanding the journey. When I talked about those micro conversions and make sure you're not wasting time, you want to be as down funnel as possible. That simple conversation of the web form has talked to a human, and the human is making a decision, good lead or bad lead. If you funnel that data back upward, it'll massively change the way that you spend money on Google. Let's hit the next slide. Okay, let's do that one. Okay, let's go back one slide. Yeah, I'm a big fan of retargeting. I mean, particularly if you're selling something that's more than a $20 product. I mean, you had a lot of time and effort to get people to your website. Now, spend that extra 20 cents on the dollar following them around until you've beaten them into submission and they do what you want. I'm sorry, until you've educated them to where they understand that you're going to provide great happiness and value to their life by engaging more intimately with your products and services. Okay, now let's flip. Just keep this in mind. Figure out a customer journey map, and your whole marketing plan might just be this until you get Series B or Series C. But be thinking kind of, when do I unwrap the next layer? Yes?
On this slide, you said that you use different metrics to measure.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a list of those metrics by stage that you're looking at?
I do, and I should have it in the PowerPoint, and I don't. Okay. But I could share. Yeah, you're probably not too shy to email me and chase me. Let's hit the next slide. Yeah, keep arguing. It's good. It's good for you. Let's see what I have next. Oh yeah. Sadly, once you have something figured out, its marketing is going to change, but as long as you're measuring everything, you'll be aware of it. There's often not one right answer. There are many ways to get something done. Even Super Bowl ads can work. Direct response TV can work in a lot of cases. Products and services are different enough that just because someone else is killing it at something and you're 10% different, it may not work for you. I mean, your customer base may be that much different that it doesn't work. I'm still studying this stuff. You know, I've been studying it a long time. Hopefully I've soaked up some things, but I mean, the key thing is figure out how to measure what's going on and figure out what kind of football team do you need in marketing. You know, are you okay with the Texas State football team, or are you in a competitive space where you actually need somebody who, you know, could play in the SEC? Not that I like the SEC, because I cheer for Texas, but that doesn't seem to do much good these days. And okay, I think that's it. Yeah. Did I overstay my welcome? How long am I supposed to be here?
11.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Questions? Complaints?
It's fabulous.
You're welcome. And you know how to reach me, so any follow-ups, feel free to do that. You know, marketing is absolutely mission critical. It's a place where you could spend the entirety of your fundraise. I don't recommend doing that. But both the service providers and the big platforms make it very easy to spend a lot and not necessarily see a lot in return. But sometimes, you know, I mean, in a lot of cases, it does make sense to spend 50% of every dollar of revenue on new customer acquisition in a Google or Facebook. I mean, they can be phenomenally powerful revenue drivers. Yes?
Yeah, so we have kind of a, I won't get too much dark about those, but when it comes to marketing, we have to do direct marketing. There's a lot of education that has to happen because we're leveraging technology from like molecular bio for environmental purpose. So there's a lot of education. There are a lot of gatekeepers in every state, all that kind of stuff. And it's a somewhat niche market with a total number of population that's small and a total dollar value that's quite large. So a lot of the things that have been successful marketing-wise have been building relationships, going to conferences, getting, you know, that kind of thing, putting out white papers, all that kind of stuff. And I don't know how to measure that. You know, it's just a chain of relationships. And so to see, you know, and I can see, well, this one didn't fail, this one didn't work, and I can see why it didn't work, but it's an N of one, you know? So how do I, with a limited number and direct touches, how do you measure that? Obviously, I'm a scientist, so I want to have a measurement.
I mean, it's tough when you have a materiality issue, you can't get to statistical significance.
Right.
And the other pain point in a lot of spaces that are esoteric, that don't have a lot of moving pieces, but every piece is hugely valuable, is you're limited in what you can even test. I mean, you need 25 to 30 data points to have statistical significance on one test. And in a lot of cases, you know, if you're in consumer or business to small business and it's a vast market, you can almost go straight to multivariate testing in your optimization routine, do some really, really cool things. You know, in your space, particularly if it's a long sales cycle and multi-touch, it's fiendishly complicated to do stuff. So no, I mean, I don't necessarily have a silver bullet for solving your issue, but you're already wrestling with the right questions, which is good.
Okay. In the meantime, I'm going to be really paying attention to my CRS. Sure, I don't lose any.
Yeah,
We have some ways of doing that. I'll talk to you afterwards.
Okay.
And I do a lot in terms of qualitative work in that case too. Like you know, anytime you get someone engaged, you know, and they're willing to talk to you, get them on the phone, put them through a survey, ask them which do you like better, A or B or this or that. So it's not statistically significant, but it could be directionally useful.
So at my company, we've done a lot of social media testing with different types of ad and different types of markets. But they're like images or illustrations.
Mm-hmm.
We're making a lot of videos now. We haven't released them yet. We're still trying to see where this goes.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the concerns some of my team members have is just the risk of maybe hurting the brand or I don't know why video just kind of feels different. Maybe it's because we're in the video and we're doing short 20-second videos, and we think it's funny, but we don't know if other people think it's funny. Like, is it gonna hurt? What would you suggest there? I don't know why, but it just feels different than just testing pictures versus.
Do you have a number of customers already?
Yes.
I might
Ask them.
ask them. Yeah, send them and say, hey, we're thinking of launching these videos. Do you guys have any opinions or advice?
Okay.
You know, very much appreciate you. Please, if we're about to face plant, let us know before we release these to the wild.
That's great.
Because they're already disposed to see you succeed.
Yeah. Okay.
And they might like being kind of cut in to sort of get the early preview before it goes, the early screening before it goes out to the public.
Okay.
Any other questions? We're coming up on lunchtime. You guys are probably getting
I think
hungry.
we've got one more session actually.
Oh, no. Okay. No, they don't let you eat at all, do they?
Well, thank you.
Well, thank you.